Hey, yo, what's good, everybody, and welcome back to Interviews with your boy Manny, and I'm here with my man, Mr. Paul DePalo, Governor's Council, 7th District, Worcester?
You nailed it.
I did. Thank you. I appreciate the layup. You hooked it up in the beginning, so I appreciate that. Thank you so much. It's such a great honor to have you here. I love hanging out with you and just talking. I think we vibe out, and probably like a big chunk of the community tend to agree on certain things, especially when it comes to the criminal justice system and making it more fair and equal for all. And it's not just electing, I don't know if that's the right term, but electing governors, not governors, judges to be able to serve in these different roles within your county and then, or district, and then you have your colleagues in the other districts in Massachusetts. Right. But also you play a big role in parole. So I understand that currently you are working on specific pardons with some of your colleagues. So can you just go into a little bit about the mechanics of how parole works and maybe some of your frustrations with the process?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that the parole board does, besides simply hold parole hearings, which is obviously the bulk of its work, is to go through commutation applications and pardon applications. Gotcha. So I think most people know what a pardon is just by the name. It's basically wiping that conviction away.
Right. You see that in the movies all the time, but what about commutation?
So a commutation is a shortening of someone's sentence or a reduction of sentence. Okay. So it could be as simple as we're going to reduce your sentence from 10 years to 8 for whatever reasoning we choose. Or an example, so let me back up. So the idea of both of those things, right, is that you're providing hope, and this isn't, again, me making this up. This is what Governor Baker's guidelines said, and Governor Healy is working on hers now. But that the idea of a commutation or a pardon, the idea that it exists gives you hope as an incarcerated individual that there is reason to pursue what admittedly we don't have enough of, but pursue if there's educational opportunities in the facility, if there's job training, if there's restorative justice, right? If there's mentoring programs. The idea is like, you're in this place is horrible, and in Massachusetts we know, the Donald Trump Department of Justice issued a report saying that in Massachusetts we violate our incarcerated population's civil rights around access to mental health. So we know how bad it is in our jails. We know that. And
again, emphasis on Donald Trump Department of Justice. Yeah,
when Donald Trump's Department of Justice is telling you that you're violating your prisoners' civil rights, like you should, you really have a problem,
pay attention to that. Yeah.
And by the way, I know really good people who are like working in the Department of Corrections trying to fix this stuff. There's cultural backlash to it. There's, there's all sorts of like institutional historical problems, and the good people doing that work get very frustrated trying to do it. But back to this pardon and commutation thing. So the idea is, this is a thing of hope. Like, if I really commit myself to this, I might get out early. Like my sentence might get commuted or pardoned. The problem is there's hundreds of applications for commutations, right? And over the last 8 years, there were 6 hearings held out of hundreds of applications, right?
So it's essentially a lottery.
Well, it's like, is there really any hope?
Right.
Not really. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's essentially a lottery, right?
If we had, let's just use the number 100, that's only 6% hope. Right?
And it's even less than that because it's more than 100 applications.
Right.
So, when I first got in 2 years ago, I pushed for some of the commutation applications that were dangling there, right? And I want to say to the governor's credit, in the last year, we did 3 commutations, 3.
Do you think that
that's
was because
good.
It was the end of a term thing for him? And
I don't think they were going to happen at the beginning of the term, is how it seemed. But I'm very hopeful that the new governor is going to take a different approach. So when we talk about commutations, right, one of the commutations that did come through in the last year was for someone who was convicted under a joint venture theory, which means that he went intending to commit a crime with someone, but not intending to commit violence or to kill someone, which is what happened.
Gotcha.
So if you or I were accomplices in this and I ended up killing someone, that wasn't your plan. That's not what we talked about.
Right.
But you would be held just as responsible as I for the murder.
So, for example, we go to rob a bank together.
Yes.
I'm gung-ho. We're going to get this money.
Yep.
We're breaking the law together.
Right.
We go in. You shoot the teller in the face. I have no idea that's going to happen.
You didn't even know I had a gun.
We weren't supposed to get the money, get out. There was no killing involved, right? As far as I'm concerned. Right. I still get in trouble for that murder.
You get the first-degree murder sentence.
What?
So, in Massachusetts, we don't give you a first-degree life without parole on a joint venture theory anymore.
Okay.
Our courts have said, that's not constitutional.
Yeah.
So there are many cases out there like the one I'm going to describe to you. A gentleman by the name of William Allen, the governor's counsel. I was really thrilled to have the honor to be able to vote to commute his sentence from first-degree murder to second-degree murder. Mm-hmm. And that might not sound like much, but what it means is now he's eligible for parole. Because with first-degree, he's not.
Right.
So basically what we were saying is we're going to reduce your conviction from first-degree to second-degree with the intent that you're going to be able to get out on parole after you've served 32 years in prison. For first-degree murder, when you didn't murder anyone, you didn't intend to murder anyone, you didn't intend to commit violence. Mm-hmm. The person you committed the crime with did. And in that instance, there was a man who went into prison when he was 19, 32 years in our correctional facilities. Remember, we're up to $92,000 a year right now to do that. In his whole time in there, I mean, he's doing every program that's available. He's on the waiting list for every restorative justice program. He's getting degrees. He's doing everything. He's getting job training certificates. 32 years. The dude who committed murder, who killed someone in cold blood, was out after 10. Wow. And we were keeping this man locked up 32 years for that. Now, listen. You shouldn't break into someone's home and commit robbery.
Right.
Period.
First and foremost. Period. Yes.
You should face consequences for that.
100%.
Okay? I don't know where you want to draw the line at what those consequences are, but to me, 32 years, you've kind of paid your dues.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
all right.
For most people, even a 19-year-old, 32 years is a lifetime. Right?
Are you the same you were when you were 19?
Absolutely not.
Would you be, would you be better served in those intervening years living your life or being in jail that whole time?
Oh, definitely not being in jail.
And your community would be better served if you were out too.
Right.
So this was like a particularly egregious case because the person who committed murder was out, and this guy
after only 10 years, by the way.
After 10 years,
and then the guy who was just the accomplice.
Well, yeah.
32.
So the guy who we ended up pardoning, his name is William Allen.
Okay.
And I absolutely was advocating for him. Like I visited him in facilities. Like I was talking about him. I was sending op-eds. But people had been working on this for years. Like I didn't make this happen by any means. I don't mean to imply that. What we've talked about is actually like Patriot star Devin McCourty was all about this case, right? And so there's a lot of other people in our jails for very similar situations that they got wrapped up and they caught the sentence of their accomplice like pretty much unknowingly, like not realizing that was even something they were putting themselves up to.
Think of all the
Devin
dumb
McCourty,
shit.
there's only so many Devin McCourtys.
Right.
There's only so many Devin McCourtys.
First and foremost, but yet there's like a never-ending supply of 19-year-olds who don't make the best decisions.
Well, not only that. So if we go back to the original trial, right, and an amazing thing of this gentleman was that one of the other governor's counselors, an older gentleman who's a very well-respected defense attorney, he was this gentleman, William Allen's attorney, way back when. Oh, wow. Way back when in the initial trial. And he was like, you need to plead to, I forget what charge they were offering, right? And this is the messed up way the system works, right? You got to plead to second degree or whatever. You got to plead to second degree because otherwise the way the law works, the way it worked back then, your co-defendant is absolutely getting convicted of first-degree murder because it's zero doubt that that's what happened. You're going to get convicted too unless you take this plea deal.
Right.
He's a 19-year-old dude.
Yeah.
Already, making bad decisions. Mm-hmm. And he's sitting there across from his attorney. I didn't do it. I didn't kill anyone. I'll plead to breaking and entering.
Right.
I'm not going to plead guilty to second-degree murder or even to manslaughter. I didn't do any of that. It's not, that's what's in his mind.
Or
now,
sometimes they're so scared they'll plead to anything too.
Well, that's the amazing part, right? It cuts both ways. In this case, he was insistent that he wasn't going to plead to something he didn't feel he did, right? Mm-hmm. And he was right. He didn't do it in reality, but under the legal theory, he did do it. He was going to be held responsible. Mm-hmm. So the system failed this kid in a million ways, right? Yeah. Like he was being, he by trying to stand up for what he understood reality to be, he was put in a position where he was punished more than he otherwise would have been, and ultimately punished more than the person who actually took someone's life.
Yeah. And, I've noticed too, more often than not, it seems like pleas are more of a win-win for the public defender prosecutor than it is the person who is.
No one wins. No one wins because when it all starts with the prosecutors. Mm-hmm. And so in this particular case of William Allen that I've been talking about, the prosecutors over-prosecuted, in my mind. There was no need to charge William Allen, the person I've been talking about, with first-degree murder. It was there's no reason to. Right. It was clear that you were allowed to charge him with that. There was no reason to. Right. He wasn't involved in planning any kind of violence. Mm-hmm. This wasn't. There was no reason to charge him with first degree. But you know how it goes, and probably most people watching knows how it goes. You charge as aggressively as you can, and now I'm scared. Mm-hmm. Like, whoa, I'm going to be exposed to how many years if they get me on that? And even if I didn't do it, well, all right, okay, I'll plead to something less. Like and the lawyers will tell you that because you know what? Most of the time the lawyers are right, unfortunately, because that's how the system is working, right? Yeah. Just take this plea. And then you end up with a record and so on and so on and so on. Right. So it starts with the prosecutors. We had overzealous prosecutors in that case, and we had them all up and down cases like that over decades. Right. We still see it happen sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so and by the way, where is that happening? It's happening to Black and Latino defendants because as a Black or Latino man, as opposed to a white man, if you go to get arraigned, right, on a charge, you go before a clerk magistrate. The clerk magistrate can ultimately get to decide what you're gonna be arraigned on, what you're gonna be charged with. The prosecutor makes recommendations, but the clerk doesn't have to follow them. Mm-hmm. Clerk can do whatever he or she wants. If you are Black or Latino, you're twice as likely to end up in superior court than in district court when that arraignment happens, those initial charges. Wow. And what I mean by that is if you are being charged with a crime where you could go to superior court, where superior court handles more serious offenses, and therefore you're exposed to longer sentences. Yeah. District court, as most people know, is kind of like the people's court, is sometimes called. It's like lower level offenses typically. Mm-hmm. So when you get into that charging phase in Massachusetts, you're 2 times more likely to end up in superior and therefore exposed to longer sentences if you're Black or Latino.
That's wild.
When there's the choice. You see what I'm saying? When there's the choice. So there's so many Black and brown men in Massachusetts who wound up in superior court. We have to wonder why they're there. All we have is the numbers. All I know is that you're twice as likely if you're Black or brown. Mm-hmm. So where's the justice? We know that the information's there. In my mind, when you know that something's wrong, you go back and fix it. Right. And so something that came up earlier in the show, let's reduce the sentences for all the Black and brown men who are in on convictions that we have evidence because they're Black or brown, they got longer sentences. Right. Why aren't we going in and doing it? That's not brain surgery, right? We're not letting out murderers. Right. This isn't about that. Like we want to keep our communities safe, but our community is no safer for having someone who's served 32 years and has been a mentor to like countless incarcerated individuals over the time has contributed to our Commonwealth more than many of us could even hope for, and done so behind bars.
Right.
And we're keeping them locked up, and it takes years, and it takes celebrities, and it takes NFL players to step up and stand up for these things, for it to even happen once. So under the last 8 years, there were 3 commutations. They all happened while I was on the council, the last 2 years. And there's dozens and dozens and dozens more. We have these hearings. We have hearings for the commutations. We speak with the folks up for the commutations, the folks who've worked with them in the facilities, the folks who've known them through various programs, right? And it's always a question. Now, is he the only one? Is he the only one at Concord who deserves to be out?
Oh, I'm sure not by a long shot.
Of course not. Of course he's not. Right. So what are we doing here? Why is this such a big deal? And the press shows up and takes pictures because, there's a commutation.
And are you going to have a Patriots player show up every time?
Right, he's busy, you know what I mean?
Probably not.
Hey, look, I'll take the photo op with Devin McCourty, and I won't lie. I stepped right up. I was like, man, can I get a picture with you? But
you can't have that for every person who deserves to be having their sentence commuted.
These guys, so William Allen, and I didn't mention another man, Thomas Kuntz, they had teams of lawyers over 10 years.
Wow.
Teams of lawyers coming in and doing all this work for free, right? And piecing together this commutation case and going through the parole board and doing all the back channels to try to see who they can connect with to get a hearing. And
now there's people behind all this.
Of people not getting paid, right?
Yeah.
And so one thing I'm doing is I'm working with the Worcester County Bar Association, the lawyer community, and I'm doing a couple panels in the spring about commutations and being like, look, there's all sorts of brothers in jail who would benefit from this, who are doing good things, who would be better off out in our communities. Our communities would be better off for it, but there's a heavy lift to make this happen. And we need lawyers to step up. I mean, we need this in so many areas too, but we need lawyers who are interested in exacting this justice to step up and do some of this work.
Right.
Because it happens so rarely that no one even knows how to approach it. It's so rare. 3 times in 8 years. I mean, it's so rare that no one knows how to do it. And so people are just left flailing, wondering. The
craziest part to me is there's actual human beings on the other side of this, that are making it this difficult for these lawyers or people to do this work. Why are there people?
It needn't be difficult.
Put in positions where they're actually, there's no reason for them to deny certain motions.
So how do we overcome this, right? How do we overcome this? So do you know who Willie Horton is?
Yes.
So Willie Horton is what put a grinding halt to pardons and commutations in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, right? And for folks who may not know, Willie Horton, I think he was on furlough, but anyway, he was work release, and he ended up committing horrible crimes. And so Governor Michael Dukakis of Massachusetts was running for president at the time, and the TV ads against Governor Dukakis were about how he let this horrible man out into the community, and he committed these horrific crimes. And so that scared every governor since then from doing that, right? I've met a lot of individuals in our state facilities who have commutation applications they've submitted. I haven't met any who are strike that. There probably are. There are. Strike that. Let me start over. Let me start that over.
You're good.
There's a lot of people in our jails in the Commonwealth who our communities would be better off if they were out.
Yeah.
We need are politicians who have the courage to do what's right. And I can tell you that it's hard.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I don't have the most power in the world, but I've had votes. It's difficult. It's hard to buck. It's hard to buck the system.
Why is that? I mean, I can say from my perspective, it seems as though people are more concerned about keeping their job or keeping their position than they are about these human lives. They're playing it safe so that they don't lose their position in whatever it is that they're doing. A lot of times these positions are granted by vote, right? Mm-hmm. The people are voted in or elected.
Right.
So
how do we make sure we have people who are going to do the right thing?
Who aren't self-serving and are actually there to make sure that the process goes as it's supposed to be.
So how do we find those people?
I mean, that's a great question, but I think
we have to elect good people.
Well, elect good people.
It's easy to shut up and go along.
Well, and also diversify the people that are included more. For sure. Have more representation, because when it hits you, when it's personal to you, you're more likely to react in a way that's more becoming, or I guess I could just say emotional, to what's affecting you, right?
Yeah.
If your brother, I don't know if you got a brother. Do you got a brother?
I don't, so you can say whatever you want
about
my imaginary brother.
If your brother was hit by a car,
okay,
versus John Smith that you'd never met before was hit by a car, what's going to affect you more? Obviously, your brother. You know what I mean? So if you have that representation.
Well, I struggle with that, man, because when I was a teacher.
Maybe not.
Well, no, I'm not disagreeing with you, but it's an interesting element of human nature, right? I used to ask my students, like, why does it matter if your baby got killed?
Yeah.
Why does that hurt so much more than if some other baby gets killed?
I mean, it happens every day, right?
No, I know, but why doesn't it hit us so hard when our babies are mistreated, when our children are abused?
I mean, why does it hit us when ours? I mean, you're more affected by it because it's immediate,
right?
Immediately at your doorstep, but immediate.
But those ripples go upstream, right? I mean, like those ripples go upstream. So that kid who's abused or whatever, one thing leads to another, and then we're all paying a price for that, and they're probably paying it most heavily,
right,
for whatever's going on, right? I mean, we were talking about. We talked earlier about kids, court-involved youth, and how that plays out. And, kids end up in our state facilities, and over half of our incarcerated population has IEPs, like has ed plans
right,
from when they were in school. And the numbers receiving special education services is literally in the single digits, and I don't mean percentage-wise, like single digits of people in our jails are receiving special education services.
Yeah, I guess they should have went with Plan B because those IEPs did not work. With that being said, before we go, I just want to give you an opportunity to let everybody know how they can get in touch with you, how they may be able to help you with your process moving forward through this next term.
Yeah, so well, definitely you can check out my website, pauldepalo.com, or find me on social media at Paul DePalo on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that. The things I'm prioritizing in the next couple of years are some education reform that aligns with criminal justice. So I'm particularly interested in something that was brought up earlier, the MCAS graduation requirement. So I hope to be working with MTA on that this year. And I want to work on the pardons for simple cannabis possession. And I need to learn more about the issue, but I also want to be working on pardons for exploited sex workers as well. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, or you just want to learn more about stuff, or you want to have some input on the judges we're putting on the bench, I'm very, very accessible, so please reach out to me.
Well, we certainly will, right, John? We're going to make sure that we reach out to you. Might end up making you a special guest co-host of mine.
I don't know. I ramble so much. You might have
No. We love it. No. I love it. I'm so happy. You make my job so easy.
Okay.
So we're definitely going to reach out to you when it comes to education reform topics and human trafficking topics as well. Hopefully you'll be available when we do those recordings. So I look forward to having you back. I love having you here, just as I did last time. I'm glad to make an even closer friend with you, my man, Paul DePalo. Thank you so much for coming. And with that, this has been another episode of Interviews. I'm Manny.
I'm Paul.
We'll see you next time.